Parishioners at the Olive Branch Church waited patiently for their service to begin on April 30th, 1989, but their Reverend Robert Pelley never showed. Even his family was absent from their pews. After walking next door to check on the family, churchgoers found the pastor, his wife, and their 2 daughters inside, lying in a pool of blood. The Indiana State Police immediately noted that the Reverend's troubled 17-year-old son, Jeff, was missing. The teen had been arrested for burglary weeks earlier and had been forbidden by his father to go to a senior prom as a result. To police, this sounded like a motive, and Jeff Pelley became their number 1 suspect. When police tracked him down at an amusement park the next day, they learned he had donned his finest suit and partied carelessly with his friends at prom the evening before. He was eventually charged and convicted of the murders of 4 of his family members. But did he really do it? Born on December 10, 1971, Robert Jeffrey Pelley came from a religious family. His father and mother, Ava, had met at Mount Vernon Nazarene University in Ohio in the 1960s. They were married in 1970 and had Jeff in 71. His younger sister, Jack, was born in 1976. While his father's primary focus was faith, the man landed a lucrative computer programming job in the 80s. The opportunity had taken them to Cape Coral, Florida, where Ava was diagnosed with skin cancer in 1984. She died the following February after refusing treatment. Within months, Robert met Dawn Huber. The 27-year-old had recently lost a spouse herself, and the 2 widowers quickly fell in love. They married so fast in November 1985 that Jeff and Jacques consequently met their new stepsisters afterwards. Blending with Dawn's 3 daughters, 5-year-old Jessica, 4-year-old Janelle, and 2-year-old Jolene, the newly formed Pelley family moved to Lakeville, Indiana in 1986. While Robert led a congregation of about 50 parishioners at the Olive Branch Church, things at home were less peaceful. Neighbours and even the state police detective knew about incidents going on in the home, one where Robert had hit Jeff. The family lived quietly in the parsonage next door to the church until early 1989, when Jeff was arrested for stealing CDs and cash from a local home. Mark Center was the state police detective and he had worked the case. He said Robert had grounded him for the burglary case. This was a big deal to Jeff, whose prom was a 2-day trip. That included a traditional dance on Saturday, April 29th, and then a school-sponsored outing to the Great America Amusement Park on Sunday, April 30th. Mark theorized that Jeff was crushed when his father stopped him attending prom, and thus stemmed the violent outburst. He claimed that Jeff only attended the prom after shooting his father, stepmother, and 2 of his stepsisters to death. The crime scene was discovered by parishioners David Hathaway after the pastor's absence from Sunday service at 9:30 a.m. When his knocking went unanswered, he found a key and walked inside. He first saw the pastor's glasses on the floor, then his corpse. Local police found Dawn, dead, clutching her 2 dead daughters. Mark said, "No one should have seen what we saw that morning. It did not look like a burglary. It did not look like a home invasion. As a detective, I saw the worst of the worst that morning, but we had a job to do, so I immediately started talking about suspects." Since Jack and Jessica and Jeff survived the massacre, investigators checked their alibis. Jack had been out of town visiting a college friend while Jessica spent the night at a sleepover. Jeff, however, had been in town and notably angry at his father. Mark concluded that he had killed his family and then went to the prom. Police questioned Jeff at the station in the company of his grandparents tracking him down at the amusement park on April 30th. When asked about his stepmother, he said, "We didn't get along real well. We talked to each other, but we never really properly talked to each other. I didn't hate her or anything, but we tolerated each other. But without a murder weapon, forensic evidence, or eyewitnesses, the case against him was thin." St. Joseph County Detective John Vitek was solely relying on circumstantial evidence and a timeline of events. He noted that several people had stopped by the home on Saturday to show off their prom dresses or tuxedos until 5 p.m. Nobody visited after that, and Jeff's 1984 grey Ford Mustang was gone by 5:30. Frank Schaefer, assistant DA, said it was a very small window when the family could have been murdered, and it was very clear the only person who could have done this was Jeff. Frank's theory was as follows. After using the family shotgun to kill the 4 victims, Jeff hid the weapon and its shells. He then washed his jeans and took a shower, got dressed, and drove to a friend's house to pick up his date for prom. But there wasn't actually enough evidence to charge him until 2002. At the time he was charged with the prom night murders, Jeff was a newfound family man. He lived in Florida and he was a consultant for IBM, but he now faced 4 murder charges. His trial began in 2006 with prosecutors relying on the timeline that they had made back in '89. The defense deemed it ludicrous. It didn't make sense that he would and actually went to prom after murdering his family, had a good time, and got on with life. Jurors found him guilty on all counts in 2006 and he was sentenced to 160 years, which was upheld by the Indiana Supreme Court in 2009. A few years later, Frances Watson of the McKinney Wrongful Conviction Clinic filed a motion for post-conviction relief. Her basis for a retrial was the 1989 luminol test of Jeff's washing machine cylinder, which hadn't actually determined whether there had been blood or even laundry detergent in the machine that day to prove whether he tried to clean his bloodied clothes. She argued that the claim that he had washed his jeans had thus unjustly tainted jurors at his trial. Furthermore, a curious transcript was never entered into evidence. Prosecutors had interviewed a woman in 2003 named Toni Beeler who spoke of Robert Pelley's shady financial dealings in Florida. She said he was scared of being murdered by his yet unidentified clients, but further information remains elusive about Jeff's dad's shady dealings. Jeff remained in prison until his evidentiary hearing in March 2022. However, since then he's continuously been denied going to retrials and it's gone up to 4 times and he remains in prison.